Today we're diving into the topic that every coach, consultant, and entrepreneur faces at some point: fear of failure.
Welcome to the Growth Beyond Hustle podcast.
Today we are talking about something that can completely transform your business. Now, it can be paralyzing, stopping us from taking risks, launching new offers, or scaling your business. Now, Kristian, this topic is so close to home because you've had some massive wins in your career, but you've also faced your fair share of setbacks. So let's start with this. Why do so many people fear failure?
Why do you give me all of these ones? Look, it's a great question, Adrian. Fear of failure is really just fear of judgment, fear of rejection, and fear of uncertainty. It's wired into us as humans because we crave scarcity. But in business, failure isn't just inevitable, it's actually essential. Every successful entrepreneur I know has failed more times than they've succeeded. The key difference is they don't see failure as a full stop. They see it as a stepping stone. And, some people, the naysayers would say, yeah, that's all well and good for you but what about the damage that you create along the way? Well, it's not like entrepreneurs set out to create damage to others, and most people have enough integrity to do the right thing as they go. But failure isn't just about catastrophic failure. Failure is about iterations. Elon Musk would not be the richest man in the world if he did not learn to fail first, right? And fail often, and then reiterate. He wouldn't be having that inquisitive mind. So yes, failure is, very much the stepping stone, not the full stop.
Dude, how do we shift from seeing failure as something to avoid and seeing it as a necessary part of growth?
Mate, it starts with a mindset shift. Instead of asking, what if I fail? Ask, what can I learn? And here's my actual approach that I've used over and over again, having failed catastrophically and then learned that it's easier to fail quickly and fail often rather than catastrophically. And that is, one, detach the failure from identity. Failing at something doesn't mean you are a failure, okay? I spent years blaming myself to the point where people wondered if I was ever going to recover, right? And, I not only recovered, but I got punched and kicked and stoned along the way for years and never gave up. I learned that was the resilience and grit muscle that I needed to develop, right? So number two, you got to analyze the lessons. You got to ask yourself, what went wrong? What could I have done differently? And you know me well enough. I do that all the time. I mean, this is what we teach in Growth School. My program is we teach them continuously. Analyze each quarter, analyze each month. How do we make sure that we learn from each and every single one, right? And then the final thing is that is so imperative is the longer you sit in failure, the more it defines you. Move the fuck on forward quickly, right? So take action immediately. Do not sit there and manifest on that, because the universe will just keep giving you more shit, and you'll focus on all of the judgmental, hypocritical naysayers who have never done anything with their life, right? That have always had a daytime job, or better still, had shit jobs or shit careers. And it's easy for them to sit in the sideline and say, you're a failure. I say, fuck you, right? Major League, the movie, where you got Serrano, big African man who, is just a gigantic meathead baller and is brilliant. And he prays to this thing every time. And we brought in a live chicken. They said you couldn't do live chickens. And he kept failing. And eventually he says in the movie, fuck your jawball. You not help me now, I help myself. And that's probably one of the greatest stories, right, of failure and how you can overcome it. Don't rely on Joe Boo. Don't rely on yourself, right? And don't sit in it, right? Overcome it. Be the wild thing.
Dude, that is freaking powerful. Mate, I'm really looking forward to hearing your answer on this because I want to hear of a time when you faced a major failure and how you turned it around.
Oh, okay. I've had a few. Absolutely. One of my biggest failures was a business collapse that left me financially ruined and questioning everything. Right? It was absolutely fucking devastating. But that was I had a group of companies. We were doing $30 million. I was naive. I'd grown too quickly. If I knew what I knew now, I never would have put myself in that situation, but I would have floated an IPO and probably become incredibly wealthy um, because of the things I didn't know, right?
Yeah.
But instead of being stuck and staying stuck, I asked myself, what skills, insights, expertise can I take from this? That failure in 2000, between 2008 and 2010, that pushed me to rebuild in a smarter, more strategic way. And ultimately, it led me to great success. I was able to help other companies that I went to work for someone, and we had a huge success. And then the industry changed due to government policy. I was able to manage that entire situation from a very authentic, caring, loving place, assisting people to retain their jobs, make them redundant, you know, and then learnt from that lesson and that failure and then went again more intelligently. And I think, Adrian, nothing could have prepared me for the pain that I felt. And that still, 14 years later, 15 years later, 16 years later, it still haunts me. There's still people who, love to remind me of you're not worthy because of you failed. Yet people forget that by the time I was 31 years old, I'd already founded 39 companies, right? And what got me out of that was originally was arrogance, because I was like, you old people, and by old people, I'm talking 40-year-olds and I was 30, or 45-year-olds, you're so pissed off because your fucking children are drop kicks and I've been having to go at life. And that was the wrong attitude to have, because but what I'm saying is that's what I started thinking to myself, because that was my coping mechanism. But when I quickly realized, hang on a minute, I made some errors here. I made some mistakes. How do I make sure I don't do them again? How do I make sure? And you know what? You keep making mistakes. You don't ever stop.
Mm.
And that's the hardest part. But that failure, Adrian, that pushed me to rebuild smarter, more strategically. And it's why I became a strategist. Everything I did took more planning, more thought. And ultimately, I went from being, this insane entrepreneur who could go to the bank, raise money, right? And to someone who wasn't in a position to raise money for 5 years. So I got, because I had one default from interest unpaid, not even a bankruptcy, right? Like, after you repay all that money, and everyone got their dues and responsibilities and everything else they needed to get. A couple of suppliers were left short. That broke my heart. It was hard. But at the same time, I look back now and I think, yeah, some of those suppliers did it tough. But when I came back, I went back and used those suppliers and made them lots more money. And a lot of these people I spent millions of dollars with. So they made their fair share. And when I say they lost something, they lost, $1,000, $5,000. It wasn't a huge amount of money in the equation. But when I came back, they were my first go-to people. And they were loyal. And we tried everything. We paid some of it back, whatever we could do with the next venture. So I always looked at those people and went, you're really smart.
Mm.
That's what I said to them. I said, you're really smart. You could have bitched and moaned and thought that I was some kind of, really bad person. But they also recognized, they said, Kristian, you've sold everything. You have nothing left. I said, no, I'm couch surfing. I'm living on other people's couches. And I went from 3 cars in the garage, all worth 150, 200 grand each, living in a, $1 million+ home back 16 years ago, living a really great life, and to nothing, to the point where, I had to repair a relationship with my family, with my mother, and asked to go back and live with her at 32, 33 years old. And when I'd been incredibly independent from a very, very young age, since I was 18. So there was a lot of really big lessons that I had to learn. And does it hurt me today? Absolutely not. I love talking about failure. The newspapers even love to say that I'm an expert in failure, and they think it's an insult. Whereas I kind of look at the people that used to write about me and I go, hey, dipshit, you're still doing exactly the same thing you were doing 10 years ago, right? You know what I mean? You're still miserable and you're still unhappy. And you're doing the same thing that you did to me to other people, right? It's not in the interest of the public. It's just in your own self-serving interest. And you gotta develop that grit. But respectfully, even to those journalists, I made mistakes. Happy to say it. I made mistakes. I've said the wrong things. I've done things but I've never never been convicted of a crime, never broken law. And that's what people need to realize. If you're going to go and be a criminal, then that's really different. That's not failure. That's you trying to be deceitful. But if you've genuinely, worked your ass off to build a future for people and build a life for others, and you care and you focus on it, and you fail, learn to fail small so you don't cause catastrophic failure. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Dude, it sounds like resilience is a key ingredient here. How can someone build resilience to bounce back like you did, stronger after setbacks? By the way, how's your bench press going at the moment?
160 is what we're up to now on the fifth set. So 15 reps. So we're doing pretty good. I'm doing a comeback. And doing that despite having that massive fall and that injury with my back. But look, resilience is a muscle, Adrian. And like bench pressing, right? You got to lift, right? You don't start at 160 kilo bench. When I remember when I went back to the gym with Trent, we were barely doing 20 kilo plates on each side, right? No, hang on, less. It was 10 kilos each side, and now we've got a problem where the Olympic barbell that we use has got a lot of weight on it. Now, I'm way away from my max 265. I don't think we'd be aiming for any number like that, not now at the tender age of 47. But I was really proud of that moment when we hit 160 last week. And it was a milestone in 4 months, right? But like a muscle, you've got to work it. And resilience has muscle memory. It remembers it, right? So the more you use it, and I guess the three ways, and this is not just me talking, this is research. I wrote a whole bunch of papers when I was going through this 7 or 8 years ago. Again, I had this cycle of where things were happening in my life, and I published a blog called The Full Metal Jacket, which is now going to become a book. We're just going to be putting that together in the next 6 months. Like I need to write another book now. But one is develop a fail fast mentality. That's what I was talking about earlier. The quicker you take action, the quicker you learn, the quicker you adjust, the quicker you adapt, right? Secondly, and really, really important, have a strong support network that keeps you grounded when things go wrong, right? Surround yourselves with the right people, okay? You cannot underestimate that. Absolutely never underestimate that. When you can walk into a room and you know that people have your back. I mean, where's my phone? A really good mate of mine, a great friend of mine actually, sent me this message. Surround yourself with people who fight for you in rooms you are not in. Right? And I was like, mate, I love you. I sent him a message. I said, mate, that is just amazing. Right? So, and the third thing is, create a buffer for failure. Expect the setbacks, plan for them. I didn't, right? So when you normalize failure, it loses its power over you, and that's really important.
Dude, that is so true. We tend to think of resilience as something you either have or you don't, but really it's a skill that you develop over time. And this is quite interesting what you said there, is that it's something that you can just continue to bounce back and become stronger at, like a muscle. So, mate, let's flip the script now. right? Can fear actually be useful in achieving success?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Fear is a signal, Adrian. It tells you that that you're stepping outside of your comfort zone, right? And that's where the real growth happens. I talk about this a lot. You've got to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. You got to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. Now, the trick is to channel that fear into fuel instead of letting it paralyze you, right? And creating anxiety, let it drive you to prepare better, work smarter, push forward with even more bloody intention, right? That's where you change the game.
Dude, freaking game changer. So what you're saying is rather than eliminating fear, we really should be learning how to use it.
Exactly. Fear isn't the enemy. Inaction is. Harness the fear, right? So you can drive forward.
Kristian, let's give our listeners something practical, right? So if someone is stuck, they're afraid of failing, or they're hesitant to take that next big leap, what's the first thing they should do?
Take one small action today. Fear thrives in inaction, whether it's making a call and sending an email or launching that offer that you've been sitting on your ass on. Just start, because the more you act, the more confidence you build, and the more confidence crushes fear. It's pretty simple.
Love that, bro. Love that. Now, any final words for someone battling the fear of failure right now?
Failure isn't the end. It's the beginning of something better. Every setback is setting you up for a stronger comeback. So stop waiting, start failing, and keep moving forward. Adrian, honestly, does not matter what people say or do, or what I say to myself or do. If you start, persist, persevere. I encourage you. It is one of the most incredible gifts that we have as humans, is this ability to keep going, right?
Yeah.
So failure isn't the end. It is the beginning of something better.
Boom, mate. Let's end on that. That was freaking incredible advice as always. Now, if this episode resonated with you, take action today, right? Take action, imperfect action. Share your biggest breakthrough with us. And don't forget to subscribe to Growth Beyond Hustle. And we'll see you in the next episode. See you, Kristian. Speak to you soon.
See you, Adrian. Ciao, man.
That's a wrap on this episode of Growth Beyond Hustle. We hope you got some real value out of today's conversation on protecting your time and energy. And remember, saying no isn't about shutting doors. It's about making space for the right opportunities. The more you set boundaries, the more you find yourself focused, productive, and in control of your business. If you enjoyed this episode, do us a favor, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the notifications so you never miss another episode. If you're ready to free up your time, stop wearing all the hats, check out Growth Outsourced, our trained virtual assistants, and take those repetitive tasks off your plate so you can focus on what truly matters.